He thought he was the king of the party until he realized he had just walked into the hell I created. That necklace was my masterpiece. Tonight, it was the evidence of his crime. He wanted a grand entrance. I gave him a spectacle the whole city will never forget. My greatest drama wasn't on a stage, but right here, where I turned my masterpiece into his weapon of destruction. My name is Alara. I am 36 years old, and tonight was the apex of my career. The Azure Gala. This was not just a party, it was a monument to 2 years of my work, staged in the grand hall of the Harrison Institute of Art. From my vantage point near the podium, I watched the elite of Chicago drift across the marble floor, their reflections captured in the polished obsidian sculptures I had fought to acquire. As the Institute's senior appraiser and head of heritage management, this exhibition was my triumph, and they all knew it. Ilara, you've truly outdone yourself. The collection is breathtaking, a silver-haired trustee murmured, his eyes lingering on a newly acquired abstract. I gave him the smile I reserved for patrons calm, appreciative, and worth millions in endowments. We were so fortunate to secure the final pieces. Robert, thank you for coming. The air hummed with success, thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume, underscored by the precise notes of a live string quartet. It was magnificent. It was also a lie. Beneath the intricate beadwork of my gown, my stomach was a cold, tight knot of apprehension. Marcus was late. My husband, 38 years old, a charismatic fund manager at Ethelredge Capital, was conspicuously absent. He had promised, just one last meeting. Alara, I swear. His voice had been smooth over the phone hours earlier. It's a big client. I'll be there right after. I wouldn't miss your night for the world. The towering main doors swung open, cutting a swath of bright light through the curated azure dimness of the hall. He entered. Marcus. He paused, as he always did, scanning the room, absorbing the attention. He was wearing his best tuxedo, a look of profound self-satisfaction etched on his handsome face. And he was not alone. His hand was firmly clasped in the hand of a young woman, perhaps 27, who looked both terrified and thrilled. My breath caught. The music faded to a distant buzz, but my heart didn't stop because of the obvious betrayal. It stopped because of what was glittering on her neck. It was unmistakable. The tear of Celine. I knew every facet, every inclusion. It was a one-of-a-kind piece, a flawless, teardrop Colombian emerald framed by a spray of antique diamonds. It had taken me 3 years of meticulous private negotiation to acquire it from a declining European estate. I gave it to Marcus for our 10th wedding anniversary. It wasn't a bauble, it was an asset, a piece of our portfolio, a strand of our legacy intended for our daughter. Across the expanse of the room, his eyes met mine. The smug smile froze, then shattered. He stared at me, his face draining of color. His gaze flickered down to the woman beside him, and then, with dawning horror, to the necklace she was wearing. He knew exactly what he had done. The shock was a physical impact, a sudden void in my chest, but it lasted only a second. It was immediately replaced by a pure, clarifying, arctic rage. He didn't just cheat. He didn't just bring his affair to my event. He had taken my heritage, the physical manifestation of my life's work, and he had draped it around the throat of his mistress. I felt the muscles around my mouth pull into a smile. It was not the smile I gave the patrons. This one was sharp, precise, and devoid of all warmth. From across the room, I raised my champagne flute, toasting them both. The game had just begun. I remember the day I gave it to him. It was 2 years ago, on our 10th anniversary. We weren't at some fancy restaurant. We were in our study. The city lights spread out below us. I presented him the velvet box. He opened it, and even Marcus, a man who dealt in 8-figure accounts, inhaled sharply. Ilara, this is the tear of Celine, I said, my voice steady. It's not for wearing, Marcus. It's for the vault. It's our future. It was more than a jewel. It was my bonus from the Atherton acquisition, the culmination of a decade of my work. It was my nest egg. I, the art historian who lived in the past, was handing this tangible piece of our future to him, my husband, the financial wizard. It was the ultimate symbol of trust. I found it, I secured it, and I gave it to him to protect. 12 years. We were that couple in Chicago, the art world and the finance world, perfectly merged. We had the impeccable condo on the Gold Coast, the charity board seats, and our daughter, Lily, our beautiful 7-year-old Lily. A wave of relief washed over me, cutting through the anger. Lily was safe. She was at my mother's house, tucked away 60 miles outside the city, blissfully unaware, drawing pictures and eating cookies. I had arranged it this morning, telling her it was a special grandma sleepover while Mommy had her big party. I had already known. Maybe not this exact public humiliating display, but I had known the foundation was rotten. The signs had been there for 6 months, textbook in their banality. The late nights at the office that stretched past midnight. The sudden, urgent weekend retreats for the firm. And the phone. His phone, which had once been left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now his constant companion, clutched in his hand or placed screen down, vibrating silently beside him. He mistook my composure for ignorance. He forgot who I was. I spend my days authenticating history. I spot forgeries worth millions of dollars based on a single brushstroke, a misplaced pigment. I manage the secrets of dead billionaires. I know how to recognize a lie. The final proof came 3 weeks ago. I was reviewing our joint investment accounts, something he usually handled, but my instincts were screaming. I found a wire transfer, $50,000, labeled as a consulting fee. I hired a private investigator that afternoon. The report landed on my desk 48 hours later, clinical and devastating. Chloe Donovan, 27 years old, a junior analyst at Ethelredge Capital. Pictures, hotel receipts, timelines, the whole sordid, predictable package. The true, stinging pain wasn't just the betrayal of our marriage, or the image of him with her. It was the insult to my intelligence. It was his sheer, catastrophic stupidity. He really thought he could outsmart me. He thought the woman who could trace the provenance of a stolen artifact through 3 centuries, wouldn't notice $50,000 walking out the front door. He thought I wouldn't see the theft of my own life. My gaze snapped back to the present. The music of the gala seemed too loud now. Marcus and his girl had found a dark corner, near the bar. He was whispering urgently into her ear, his hand on her arm. She looked terrified, her eyes darting around the room, no longer the triumphant mistress, but a child caught stealing. She was starting to realize the price of the pretty bauble around her neck. He brought her here. He brought her to the Azure Gala, the event that had consumed my life for 2 years. He walked into my room, onto my stage, holding her hand. It was not a mistake. It was an act of profound arrogance, a public execution. What, precisely, did he imagine would happen? Did he think I would break down, that I would cause a scene, validating his choice by becoming the hysterical, scorned wife? Did he believe I would run to the restroom and cry, allowing him to comfort his new acquisition and paint me as unstable? He forgot who I am. He forgot what I do. He saw me as a wife. He forgot I am a guardian. My entire life is dedicated to protecting priceless objects, irreplaceable legacies, from the greed and stupidity of men exactly like him. I am the person who safeguards history. He was just a common thief. And that necklace, the tear of Celine. His decision to bring it here elevated his betrayal from a personal infidelity to a professional crime. It was no longer just an insult. It was theft. The beautiful, fatal mistake he made was in assuming I was unaware. At 9 o'clock this morning, hours before I even looked at my evening gown, I was at our bank. I had requested access to our joint safe deposit box, citing a need to check on our insurance appraisals. The bank manager, an old acquaintance, had accompanied me. The box was opened. The velvet case that should have held the necklace was gone. I had calmly, and with appropriate distress, reported that an item valued at $4 million had been removed from my possession without my consent or knowledge. Because it was a joint box, the bank could only file an incident report, but I took that report and filed it immediately with the Chicago Police Department. It was, after all, the technical truth. I had a case number tucked neatly inside my clutch. My original plan had been quiet. I was going to let him enjoy his evening, let him bask in my success. I was going to let my legal team, led by the formidable Mrs. Jacobs, descend upon him on Monday morning. It was going to be a private, swift, and brutal dissection of his finances and his future. But Marcus, in his infinite arrogance, had just handed me a gift wrapped in emeralds and diamonds. He brought the stolen property, the actual physical evidence, to a room full of the city's most powerful people, including the police chief and half the board of trustees. He had just accelerated his own destruction. The plan had changed. I was not waiting until Monday. I felt the knots in my stomach dissolve, replaced by that cold, clear focus I get before a major auction. I began to move. Ilara, marvelous. The curation is simply divine, a donor murmured, kissing the air near my cheek. Thank you, Senator. I'm so glad you could see it in person, I replied, my smile unwavering. I navigated the glittering crowd, a word here, a nod there, accepting congratulations on an exhibition they were praising. Every step was measured, every social grace was observed, but my eyes were locked on my target. I watched them in their dark corner, Marcus and Chloe. He was still whispering. She was nodding, but the panic was rolling off them in visible waves. A frighteningly serene calm settled over me. The pain in my chest had evaporated. This was no longer a matter of heartbreak. This was a matter of asset recovery. My heart was not broken. It was forged. I threaded my way through the last cluster of guests, the silk of my gown whispering against the marble. They were still huddled by the bar, a portrait of guilt. He was trying to look casual, leaning against the counter, while she looked like she wanted to bolt. I assembled the smile I used for difficult donors, the one that radiated warmth while promising absolutely nothing. I stopped directly in front of them. Marcus, darling. My voice was honey poured over ice. I'm so glad you could make it. I was beginning to worry. I leaned in, ignoring the woman at his side, and pressed my lips to his cheek. His skin was cold, clammy. He was rigid, a statue in a tuxedo, the muscles in his jaw tight. Ilara. He swallowed, his voice strained. You look magnificent. The exhibit is truly stunning. He gestured awkwardly to the woman, who was shrinking under my gaze, her eyes wide. Ilara, this is Chloe Donovan. She's a colleague from the firm. Chloe. I offered her a brief, dismissive nod. My eyes traveled deliberately from her anxious, too young face, down the pale skin of her throat, and settled on the massive emerald resting there. It was like seeing a Picasso hanging in a college dorm room. What a pleasure! I lifted my hand, my index finger hovering just millimeters from the center stone. Chloe flinched, but I didn't touch it. That is an exquisite necklace, truly remarkable craftsmanship. I paused, letting the silence stretch, the sound of the string quartet filling the space. It's the Tear of Selene, if I'm not mistaken. A nervous, fluttering blush flooded Chloe's cheeks. She was momentarily torn between the pride of wearing such a jewel and the terror of my scrutiny. Pride won. Oh, you know it, she breathed, her hand fluttering up to touch it, her fingers brushing the diamonds. Marcus gave it to me. He said that it was completely one of kind. Oh, it is unique, I confirmed, my voice dangerously soft. I finally tore my gaze from the jewel and locked eyes with my husband. It's so unique, Chloe, that it has an acquisition and appraisal file 50 pages thick in the Harrison Institute archives, and, as of this morning, a police report filed in its name. The blood drained from Marcus's face, leaving a sickly pale sheen under the elegant lighting. Ilara, he hissed, the word low and sharp, a desperate warning. He tried to grab my elbow. I moved just out of his reach, that brilliant, empty smile still plastered on my face. We are in a very public place, Marcus, I whispered. The words meant only for him, a cold counter-warning. Among my colleagues and your clients, you should remember that. And speak of the devil, a booming voice interrupted the standoff, saving Marcus from having to form a response. I turned, the smile on my face instantly transforming, becoming a convincing facsimile of genuine delight. Mr. Caldwell, the 60-year-old chairman of the Harrison Institute's Board of Trustees, was approaching, his hand outstretched. Caldwell was old money, sharp as a tack, and, most importantly, the single largest institutional client managed by Ethelredge Capital. His pension fund was Marcus's crown jewel. Ilara, my dear, he boomed, enveloping my hand in his warm, dry grip. What an evening you've eclipsed yourself. The press on the East Coast is already calling this the exhibit of the year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I matched his enthusiasm, my voice ringing with professional gratitude. Your support of the new wing is what made this entire evening possible. I pivoted, a fluid motion, and slid my arm through Marcus's elbow. He was a block of marble, cold and rigid. I squeezed, a possessive, public gesture, a claiming, you know my husband. Marcus, of course. Naturally. Caldwell boomed, releasing my hand to shake Marcus's. Marcus offered a weak, forced smile that looked painful. The golden boy of Ethelredge handles the Institute's pension, you know. Good to see you. Son. Caldwell's eyes, bright and assessing, moved to the young woman plastered against Marcus's other side. And this is... Chloe Donovan, sir, Marcus interjected, his voice high and strained, desperate to control the narrative. She's one of our most brilliant analysts at the firm, absolutely indispensable. Wonderful, Caldwell murmured, giving Chloe the brief, polite glance one affords the help. He was a man who collected art, not analysts. He turned back to me, about to continue his praise. When the light from the chandeliers caught the jewel, he stopped. The genial, booming politician vanished, replaced instantly by the sharp, focused gaze of the collector. His eyes narrowed. He took an involuntary step closer, not to Chloe, but to the object on her chest. Good God, he said, his voice dropping from a public roar to a low, stunned hush. Is that the tear of Selene? His head snapped toward me, his expression baffled. Ilara, I thought that piece was the cornerstone of your private collection. I've been trying to buy it off you for years. The space around us fell silent. The conversations of the nearest guests sputtered and died, their attention drawn by the sudden shift in our chairman's tone. They all knew me. They all knew my reputation, my husband's client, and my rival curators were all watching. I let the silence hang for 1, 2, 3 beats. I looked at Caldwell, and I forged an expression of profound, weary sadness. The look of a woman betrayed but doing her best to remain composed. That, I said, my voice quiet but carrying, is what is so deeply confusing. Mr. Chairman, I took a small, troubled breath. This very piece, I gestured to the emerald, was reported stolen from our secured bank vault just this morning. I filed the report with the Chicago PD at 9 o'clock. Chloe gasped, a sharp, ragged intake of air. Her hand flew to her throat, her fingers spread protectively over the emerald. What? Her voice was a thin squeak of pure panic. Her terrified eyes darted to Marcus. "Stolen, Marcus. You lied to me. You said it was a gift." Marcus's face was a mottled, terrifying white. He lunged for my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep, hissing through clenched teeth. "Ilara, what the hell do you think you are doing?" I yanked my arm from his grasp, a sharp, clean motion. I didn't look at him. I looked directly at Mr. Caldwell, ensuring my most important audience was captivated. I raised my voice, infusing it with cold clarity, loud enough for our entire corner of the room to hear. "I am doing my job, Marcus," I stated, my tone sharp as glass. "I am protecting the Institute's assets, and my own." I finally turned my gaze on Chloe, a look of cold pity. "It's just so incredibly strange, isn't it, that a colleague would arrive at the Azure Gala wearing a $4 million stolen item, especially to an event honoring the very woman it was stolen from?" Over Caldwell's shoulder, I caught the eye of David, the museum's head of security. He was in a tuxedo, not a uniform, blending in near the main sculpture. I gave him the signal we had discussed this afternoon, a discreet, almost invisible tap of my index finger to my temple. A potential security threat, I had called it. An insurance matter. He nodded once, then spoke quietly into his wrist. Two other men, also in tuxedos but with the unmistakable bulk and posture of security, detached themselves from the edges of the room and began to move steadily toward our cluster. I turned back to Mr. Caldwell, my face a mask of professional regret. "Mr. Chairman, please forgive this appalling interruption. It seems we have a rather serious security situation that I must handle immediately." The two guards arrived, flanking our group. They were quiet, professional, and imposing. I nodded to them and then looked directly at Chloe, who had begun to visibly tremble. "Gentlemen, this lady is wearing an item that matches the description of a high-value piece reported stolen in a Chicago Police Department filing this morning. Please escort her to the security office on the 4th floor." "What? No!" Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking. She stumbled backward, trying to get away. "Wait, Marcus. Do something. Tell them, Ilara, stop this. Stop this insane game right now." Marcus finally roared, his voice losing all its polished charm, dropping into a rough, desperate growl. "It's a misunderstanding. You know it is." I turned on him, my calm finally breaking, replaced by a cold, surgical fury. "A misunderstanding." I shot back, my voice low but sharp enough to cut through his panic. "Which part is the misunderstanding? Marcus, was it a misunderstanding when you used your key to access our joint safe deposit vault? Was it a misunderstanding when you removed an asset insured solely under my name, or was it the part where you gave it to her?" A series of bright flashes erupted from our left. My prearranged surprise? A senior features reporter from the Chicago Tribune, someone I'd personally invited to cover the cultural impact of the gala, was snapping photographs, his camera's flash illuminating the scene Marcus's contorted, furious face, Chloe's tear-streaked panic, and my own cold composure. Mr. Caldwell, who had been watching this exchange with growing horror, finally exploded. His face was a thunderous, apoplectic red. He rounded on Marcus, jabbing a finger in his chest. "Mr. Marcus, are you even aware that Ethelredge Capital manages the Institute's entire pension fund, a fund I oversee, and you have the unmitigated gall to bring a woman wearing stolen property into our lobby, property stolen from the woman running this event?" The security men took Chloe firmly by the arms. She was past coherent speech, just sobbing now, repeating, I didn't know. He told me it was a gift. Get your hands off her." Marcus lunged forward, trying to push one of the guards away. The second guard, built like a linebacker, stepped directly into his path, blocking him with a solid arm to the chest. "Sir," the guard said, his voice flat and calm, "you are interfering with museum security. We will need you to come with us as well, to clarify the situation." The great hall of the Harrison Institute was so quiet I could hear the hum of the climate control systems. The string quartet had faltered, the last note of a Mozart piece dying in the air, unfinished. Every eye, and there were hundreds, was locked on our small group. It was a perfect silent tableau: the cornered husband, the hysterical mistress, and the avenging wife. The air was thick with judgment. Marcus stared at me, his face a mask of pure, undiluted hatred, the panic momentarily eclipsed by a venom that shocked even me. "You will regret this, Ilara," he hissed, his voice low and trembling. "I swear to God, you will regret this." I held his gaze, unblinking. "Regret," I replied, my voice perfectly clear and cold, carrying easily in the sudden vacuum of sound. "I have been living in a state of regret for 6 months. Marcus, every time you worked late, every time you took a client trip, every time you lied to my face. Tonight, I am not creating regret. I am simply cleaning up your mess." As if my words were the signal, the security men began to firmly escort Chloe toward the elevators. She was completely undone, bucking against their grip. She clawed at the emerald, her own nails scraping her skin as she fumbled with the clasp. "Take it!" she shrieked, the sound echoing off the marble. "Get it off me, I don't want it. Please, just take it." "No," I said. My voice was not loud, but it had the sharp, precise authority that commanded silence. Everyone stopped. Chloe froze. Her tear-streaked face turned to me in terror. "That necklace is not to be touched by anyone. It must be removed, documented, and cataloged by the police as evidence in an active theft investigation." A new wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Chloe let out a broken sob and went limp between the 2 guards, who half dragged, half carried her from the room. Marcus was left alone. A circle of empty space had formed around him, as if he were diseased. Guests, his friends, our friends, stared at him, their expressions ranging from pity to pure disgust. He looked frantically for an ally, his eyes landing on Mr. Caldwell. It was his last hope, his biggest client. Caldwell, his face still a furious red, stared back at him for one long, silent moment. Then, in a gesture more final than any public firing, he slowly and deliberately turned his back on my husband. The reporter from the Tribune was no longer even pretending to be subtle. His smartphone was held high, its red light glowing, recording the entire exchange. His pen was flying across his notepad, capturing the public execution. I turned from the ruin of my husband and faced my guests. I was the host, after all. I raised my voice, projecting the calm, curated warmth I used to command multi-million-dollar auctions. "Ladies and gentlemen, my deepest apologies for that unfortunate interruption." I let my eyes scan the crowd, landing on the most important trustees, offering a small, sad smile of solidarity. "Please, I insist you return to your evening. Enjoy the collection. Enjoy the music." I paused, letting them hang on the last word. Sometimes, even in the most curated collections, we discover a poor forgery. It's always best to remove it immediately. I nodded to the conductor of the string quartet. Startled, he immediately lifted his bow, and the sharp, bright notes of a Vivaldi concerto sliced into the tension. The music resumed, but no one moved. The spell was not broken. The party was over. They were all watching, mesmerized, as a man's entire life was dismantled in real time. My part in this scene was finished. I did not look back at Marcus. I did not need to. I could feel the heat of his humiliation from across the room. I simply turned, my back straight, and began to walk toward the grand staircase that led to my offices. As I ascended the first few steps, I heard new voices, loud and official, cutting through the music. 2 uniformed Chicago police officers, called by security the moment I gave the signal, were walking directly toward Marcus. He was no longer my husband. He was their problem. I didn't go to the security office. I bypassed it completely, my heels clicking on the marble as I ascended the grand staircase, leaving the scene of the crash behind me. My destination was my own office on the 4th floor, the sanctuary where I had built the entire exhibition. The lights were on. Mrs. Jacobs, my lawyer, was already there, sitting not in a guest chair but behind my own mahogany desk, a thick binder open in front of her. She looked up as I entered, her expression calm and appraising. She was a woman who specialized in high-asset divorces and corporate malfeasance. Tonight, she was getting both. "So," she said, her voice dry as parchment, "are our problem children detained?" I walked to the small bar cart and poured myself a glass of water, my hand perfectly steady. "Marcus is downstairs with 2 of Chicago's finest. Chloe is in the security office with our head of security, presumably learning the definition of accessory to grand theft. The necklace is the pivot. It's undeniable." "Good." Mrs. Jacobs tapped a perfectly manicured finger on the open binder. "Because the information from the forensic accountant is infinitely worse than simple adultery." I stopped, the glass halfway to my lips. I had been prepared for embezzlement. I was not prepared for the look in her eyes. She turned the binder around for me to see. It was a flowchart. "Marcus didn't just take $50,000. Ilara, that was a test run, a drop in the bucket." She pointed to a line item. "2 months ago, your husband used his power of attorney over your joint investment account, the one that holds your art portfolio as its primary asset, to secure a line of credit. A 7-figure line of credit. He mortgaged my collection," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. "He mortgaged your life's work," Jacobs corrected, her voice cold. "He didn't secure the loan from a bank. He secured it from a private equity fund managed by Ethelredge Capital." "His own company?" "His own company. He faked a debt against your assets, essentially loaning himself your money, and then funneled that money through 2 offshore accounts into a shell corporation registered in Delaware." She slid another document across the desk. "A shell corporation named CD Ventures, LLC. The sole proprietor Chloe Donovan." The air left my lungs. The $50,000 consulting fee wasn't a withdrawal. It was the first installment. "He wasn't just cheating," I said, the realization settling on me like a shroud. "He was planning to liquidate my entire portfolio. He was going to empty the accounts and run." "With her," Jacobs finished. "The necklace. That was just him being stupid, arrogant. He was showing off to his girlfriend with your property. But the financial fraud, Ilara, that is the real crime. That's federal. And by bringing the necklace here tonight," I began, the pieces locking into place with sickening precision. "By bringing the necklace here tonight," Jacobs interrupted, a grim smile touching her lips. "He gave us exactly what we needed. He publicly demonstrated that he is mentally compromised, recklessly arrogant, and an active threat to your financial well-being. He just handed a judge, on a silver platter, all the justification we need for an immediate emergency injunction. We can freeze every single account. We can lock him out of everything. He came here tonight to humiliate you, but he actually just disarmed himself." I walked to the tall, arched window of my office. It overlooked the grand entrance of the museum. The party was over. Guests were streaming out, huddling in shocked groups on the steps. And there, on the curb, illuminated by the flashing blue and red lights of a squad car, was Marcus. His hands were behind his back. An officer was securing handcuffs around his wrists. He wasn't just losing his wife. He wasn't just losing his job. He was losing his name, his reputation, and his freedom. He had lost everything. We took the elevator down, not to the lobby, but to the basement-level administrative wing where the security office was located. The sterile fluorescent lighting was a brutal contrast to the soft azure glow of the gala. The 2 police officers stood by a closed door. "Mrs. Jacobs flashed her credentials, and one of them nodded us in. It was a small, windowless room. Marcus was sitting at a metal table, his $1 million tuxedo hopelessly rumpled. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, the handcuffs were gone, but the two officers stood flanking the door, their presence making the cuffs redundant. He looked up as we entered, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "They've got Chloe in the next room," one officer said quietly. "She's emotional. Her company sent a lawyer over." Of course they did, I thought. Ethelredge Capital wasn't protecting Chloe, they were protecting themselves from Chloe. The moment Marcus saw me, he sprang up from the chair, his face a mask of desperate, performative outrage. "Ilara, thank God, tell these idiots, tell them to let me go. This is insane. It's a misunderstanding. That necklace is joint property. Tell them." I stopped a few feet from the table. I looked at him. Not my husband, but a specimen, a failed experiment. "Joint property. Marcus," I asked, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion at all. "The concept of joint property does not extend to you stealing it from a secured vault and gifting it to your mistress." "And it most certainly," Mrs. Jacobs added, stepping forward and dropping the thick, heavy binder onto the metal table with a deafening smack, "does not count as joint property when you have illegally and fraudulently used it as collateral to secure a personal loan from your own firm." Marcus stared at the binder as if it were a bomb. "What? What is that? I don't know what you're talking about." Mrs. Jacobs didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "That, Mr. Marcus, is the forensic accountant's report detailing your systematic embezzlement of your wife's assets. It details the fraudulent line of credit, the wire transfers to your shell corporation, CD Ventures, and the conspiracy to defraud this institution by leveraging assets you had no right to. We've moved beyond grand theft. Marcus, we are now in the realm of federal mortgage and wire fraud." The color, the anger, the bluster, it all drained from his face at once. The furious husband vanished, replaced by a terrified, cornered animal. He understood. He finally, truly understood the depth of the hole he was in. His eyes darted to me, and he tried one last, pathetic maneuver. He softened his voice, trying to find the man I had once loved. "Ilara, please," his voice cracked. "Please, don't do this. Think of Lily. You can't do this to her, to our family." The mention of our daughter's name was a lit match. The ice in my veins turned to steel. I stepped forward, right up to the table, forcing him to meet my gaze. "I am thinking of Lily," I hissed, my voice a low, vicious whisper that was meant only for him. "I am thinking of her future. The future you tried to steal from her to finance a new life with your 27-year-old analyst. I am thinking of the legacy her grandparents left her, the one you mortgaged so you could buy that girl's silence and loyalty." I leaned in closer, so he could see nothing but my eyes. "You will not see Lily. You will not get a single cent from me. The house is in my name, Marcus. It always was. The collection is mine, secured in my trust. And you," I said, the words precise and final, "will have to answer for this. You will face the Harrison Institute for breach of contract. You will face the SEC for wire fraud, and if you dare to fight me on any of it, you will face me in court. You have nothing left." He sank back into the chair, a broken man, the fight gone, replaced by a hollow void. "You took the necklace," I said, turning to leave, "but in your arrogance, you handed me the very cuffs I needed to lock you away." He stared at the binder, then at my face, then back at the damning pages. The final terrible realization clicked into place. It was a visible, physical event, like watching a building's foundation give way just before it collapses. He saw it all. He saw the trap, not just the one he had blindly walked into tonight, but the larger, more complex machine I had built around his treachery, the public scandal, the mistress, the stolen necklace that was just the theater, It was the loud, emotional, flashy crime that blinded everyone, especially him, to the real weapon. The true crime was the one he committed in silence, in the cold, dull spreadsheets and wire transfers. The necklace got him caught. The binder would get him convicted. "You planned this," he breathed, the words barely audible. His voice was hollow, stripped of its anger, filled only with a new, horrifying awe. "You planned all of it. The police report, Caldwell, the reporter. You knew I'd bring her." "You planned your own destruction, Marcus," I replied, my voice as cold and flat as the metal table between us. "You started when you decided my life's work was your personal slush fund. You drew the map of your own greed. I just simply followed it to its logical, inevitable conclusion." Mrs. Jacobs, ever the pragmatist, slid a single sheet of paper and a pen across the table, placing it directly in front of him. "This is your one and only chance to mitigate the damage. Marcus," she said, her voice clinical and void of sympathy. "It is a full confession and a final binding settlement agreement. You will sign over any and all claims to every joint asset, every account, and every property. You will admit, in writing, to the theft of the necklace. You will agree to an uncontested divorce, cede full and sole custody of your daughter, and waive all rights to alimony or any further claims. You will sign away everything." "And in return," he whispered, his eyes frantically scanning the page, searching for a loophole that didn't exist. "In return," I said, my voice cutting him off, "I will not personally pursue the criminal charges related to the theft. I will allow the state, the SEC, and the Harrison Institute to handle the multiple counts of fraud. This document is your only chance to avoid having my name added to that very long list of prosecutors." He stared at the paper. It was his entire life. 12 years of marriage, his home, his child, his reputation, all of it, erased in a single signature. He looked up at me one last time, his eyes pleading, searching for a single trace of the woman he married, a flicker of mercy. He found none. His hand trembled so violently he could barely grip the pen. He fumbled, then, finally, pressed it to the paper and signed his life away. "Good," Mrs. Jacobs said, retrieving the document before the ink was even dry. She placed it neatly in her briefcase and snapped it shut. The two officers, who had been silent observers, stepped forward. "Mr. Marcus, you'll be coming with us," one of them said, his voice polite but firm. "Mr. Caldwell and the Institute's legal team have already filed a formal complaint regarding financial misconduct. We need to take your statement down at the precinct." He didn't resist. He stood up like a puppet, his strings cut. He let them lead him out of the room, a ghost in $1 million tuxedo, his future as empty as his eyes. Mrs. Jacobs nodded to me, a curt gesture of victory. "I'll file this first thing in the morning, and for what it's worth, Chloe Donovan is cooperating fully. Turns out, when faced with a potential 20-year sentence for felony wire fraud, her undying love for Marcus evaporated. She's giving the district attorney everything on a silver platter." I left them to the grim legalities. I walked back up the stairs, the sterile quiet of the basement giving way to the faint, persistent sound of the string quartet. I re-entered the grand hall. It was emptier now, but many people had stayed, drawn by the scent of blood and drama. The necklace, my tear of Celine, was already gone, safe in an evidence bag on its way to a police vault, soon to be returned to mine. Mr. Caldwell was waiting for me by the grand staircase. He walked over, his face a mask of grim sympathy. "Ilara," he said, placing a heavy paternal hand on my shoulder. "A truly devastating turn of events. You are an invaluable, priceless asset to this institute. Whatever you need, from the board, from me personally, it's yours. We will stand by you." "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "I think, for tonight, I've handled it. I walked past him, toward the center of the magnificent room I had created. I had lost my husband of 12 years. I had publicly and privately destroyed him. But in doing so, I had saved my reputation, I had secured my collection, and I had protected my daughter's future from the very man who was supposed to be its guardian. I picked up an untouched glass of champagne from a passing tray. I raised it high, not to the remaining guests, but to myself, a silent toast in the wreckage. The revenge was complete, not with tears or screams, but with the cold, clean, undeniable stroke of a pen on a contract. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to connect with you, so please drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you're tuning in from and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.